I'm from a very small town, and I went to the capital city in my state, which is about 1,000 kilometers from where I grew up, to study mathematics. And in my hometown, I didn't even know anyone who worked in an office. Like, it was so different. So the idea that I was going to study mathematics was wild to a lot of people, and no one thought I would ever get a job. This is an actual photo I put on my this is how I announced my graduation, by the way. You can tell it's old because Doge meant something different at the time, but this is, yeah, very unemployed, capital letters. I was really worried about this, and people kept asking me, like, why would you even study mathematics? Why no one cares about statistics or calculus? And this is how I explained it. Like, it shows you how to use a toolbox. There are so many things that you learn in mathematics, and you just put it in your little toolbox. And then it teaches you that when you are faced with a big problem, you look into your toolbox, see what's in there, and see how you might solve the problem using all of the tools that you have available. Learning to code just felt like an extension of this for me. I started with MATLAB. Any MATLAB lovers in the crowd? No one loves it. But this is how it just felt like another tool I had in my toolbox. And this I've kept going throughout. This is a big reason I learned AWS in the first place, because it just felt like some other great tools to add to my toolbox. And this is like the core to me of what it feels like to be a developer. That idea keeps changing so much. Like, this is the whole idea of the talk, but what it means to be a developer is changing now, but that's always changed. And to me, it still just seems like a toolbox. So what's in your toolbox? Does anyone know Rust? We have one Rust fan, and you can tell because they're always really loud. There's lots of people with that. Other types of AWS things, even being able to speak about your ideas, super useful. Maybe you're really good at documentation. That's in your toolbox too. So this whole idea of what's in your toolbox, don't focus on how you can add the most things to it. Remember that it's not just understanding those things in your toolbox, but being able to use them when you need to, which is the same with tech. Like, there's no point having all of these APIs if you're not using them for something, or if you can't connect to them. This idea of connectivity and being able to solve problems, this is what it means to be a developer. So when you're solving a coding problem, how do you think about it first? I asked this on social media recently. It was my first time getting to ask in a room. So point to the side of the room on 3, 2, 1. Yeah. So for me, it's plain language first. And turns out that this is actually true for a lot of people. I only think code first when there's a song with really repetitive lyrics, and then my brain starts turning it into Python loops against my will. That is the only time I think purely code first, but I'm a UX person at heart, always have been, always will be, and this is really how I attack things. But this part here, so over 80% of the people I surveyed across all of my social media accounts are thinking in language first, at least some of the time. And this isn't just about AI adoption. This is how our brains work. So language first looks like, I need to get user data, check if they're authenticated, then display it on a dashboard. Like, that's how I would think about it. Then I would turn that into this code. However, that's not the case for everyone. Some people just go straight into code. If you're like this, please tell me. I'd love to talk to you after. But this idea of being able to go to language, then translate to code, this to me is the most exciting part of everything that I've been doing behind the scenes with Q Developer at AWS. So if you naturally think language first, at least some of the time, which from this room is a lot of you, and from my social media, also an awful lot of people, this is working with how your brain already thinks. You're going from thought to code and taking out that friction layer in the middle. You're still having that thought. You're still understanding all of the pieces of context that go into that thought, but it's just helping you to make that bridging step faster, which, like, for me, so much of realizing how neurodiverse I was at a later age, so much of this, when I've been able to get success from this, is just stopping fighting my brain on so many different things. I was trying so hard to make my brain think a certain way, and the ways that I got success were really just about, how can I go through this? So much is changing with AI. Who has heard a word in the last year that sounded straight up made up? Me. Who was horrified to find out if that word was actually real? Also me. Thank you so much for people who named RAG RAG, and now I get to say it on stage all the time. So even though so much is changing, so much is staying the same. And I've been thinking a lot about this. I make a lot of social media content as part of my role. In 2024, my videos got over 287 million views across all of social media. And most of that is because I spend so much time thinking about what developers actually want and thinking about what are they trying to do, what are they trying to learn, how can I get there? And this is a sort of framework I've come to figure out about how this is actually happening. So at the bottom of a pyramid, I started thinking about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I know there's at least one psych major in the room, so they will know. But the table stakes, this is like the well-architected framework. Operational excellence, security, reliability, these are all table stakes. From here, it's like an MVP level. So I can build what I need to build, and it works. Great, very foundational for developers. Then we get up to things being nice to work with. Things like good docs, helpful tools, even about being able to find the right tool for the job in your toolbox. Like that's where this developer experience layer is coming in. From here, we also have learning and growth. So things like being able to be recognized as an expert. My favorite one in here is a global network of who will I sit with at events. This is what the AWS community means to me. I started as a community builder. I was at a partner org first, was a community builder, an AWS hero, and now I work here. So do we have any AWS community builders in the room? Yeah, keep your hands up. Do you have any heroes? I know we have some. Yes. Do we have any partners in the room? I know there's a lot of partners. Come on, show yourselves. So this being able to, like, I know all of these people. I've sat at tables at events with these people all around the world. I always have someone to sit with, and I have someone to learn with and sound my ideas off. This layer is what that means to me, and being able to get up to speed with all of these new pieces of technology, because like I said, it doesn't matter if something exists if you don't know how to use it. And the biggest connector for me has been the community in this. And the top layer I have sanitized because I found out this was recorded, and it says building cool shoot. You can use some imagination about what I meant here, but to me, this is what vision and the top of the pyramid seems like for developers. Like at the end of the day, can you have a wild idea as a thought and then bring that into code? Can you make that translation, and will it actually work? And can you create something you didn't think you could before? To me, this is the pyramid of what it feels like about what developers care about. This is how I think about it. I continue to refine this. And what's important about all of this is none of this mentions technology. This was true 10 years ago, and it's still true now. And it's going to be true in the future, because this is about how we care about making software and how we go about thinking about making it versus the tools that we're using to do it. Because the tools are going to change. They've changed so much in the last week. They're going to keep changing in the next week. I know for sure there's launch content I need to make after this. There's going to be more things that change, and it's going to keep changing. So I think as someone that does not always love change, this is the way I really come to think about what I'm doing. How can I stay at the core of what it means to be a developer, and how can I build things that I value and really stay true to what I wanted, even when there is so many chaotic names coming up around me all the time? And when we look at the fundamental change, it's really all about how humans and computers interact. It started with commands from machine code in 1940s. Please, if you are from the 1940s and you actually came to this event, come and see me after, that's incredible. But we then moved to Fortran and COBOL. I did a COBOL course last year in preparation for a launch video, Wild Times. Who here learned COBOL? Yeah. It's changed since then, right? Like, it's a whole different idea, but it was still about how can you talk to the computer. You're still talking to computers now. Maybe some of you are still doing that in COBOL, but a lot of you would have changed how you're doing that, even though the end state is still just working with that. We also have, there's got to be some Python people here. I know I'm a Python person. Do we have any other Python people? Yes, great. Also Java. And then we move to the final bit from the diagram of generative AI. So Q Developers started in 2022. And like I was saying, this is all about how we can use language to communicate with computers. So overall, this has changed a lot. But one of the things that stays the same is being able to define a task and complete it. One of my most hot takes in generative AI is that people are bad at prompting for the same reason they're bad at management. And that's because describing a task is really hard sometimes. Or you have other pieces of the task that are just in your brain that you never communicated. Did anyone ever get a task given to them when they were a junior or an intern, and the person in management who gave it to you made it seem really easy, And it turned out, in fact, to not be easy. Yes, this is a universal experience, right? And then so think about that experience when you're prompting language models, because you're still trying to communicate with the language model in the way that you communicate with the person. But everyone has had a manager that's left out incredibly important pieces of context that would have really helped them to achieve that task. So all of this comes down to communication at the end of the day, even though it's changed. So now if we look at how the AI coding experience has evolved, we started with code completion, then it went to a coding agent, and then agentic AI. Will this play normally? Oh, it is. Perfect. So this is what it meant when we were talking about inline code completions. This actually really annoyed me as a neurodiverse person because I didn't like that it was distracting me. You'll now see how the product, you can still do these pieces, but you'll see how the product has changed around this because I find it's just, this wasn't keeping me in my flow state the way that we can now. But this is what some auto completion and explanation looks like. Will it go to the next one? So that was helpful, but a bit passive. And then we moved through to coding agents. So things like /dev, if you've seen in QDeveloper, anything that you were being able to expand on your knowledge and still use natural language to get there, but with some more overhead on your side. So, is this gonna work too? Yes. So this is a /review agent. It is what it sounds like. It reviews your code. There's actually also a library, and you can see the detectors that are used across Amazon QDeveloper, across all major coding languages. There's hundreds of detectors there looking for all sorts of things. I find it really interesting to look through the Python ones. It's not all PEP 8 things. There's all other elements there, as well as things like OWASP Top 10. And this is automating your code reviews. The biggest thing here is that lots of people were treating code reviews for a long time as an afterthought. I know I was, because they were annoying and I didn't want to have to admit to someone how long I'd taken on a task, and this sort of did that by design. So being able to do code reviews myself has really helped me to be able to do this. Also, I've heard so many companies being able to show that they're actually doing so many more reviews than they ever were before. So now you can have this automated as part of your CI/CD pipelines instead of just having it as an afterthought or a department that someone has to come in as an overlord and fix this for you. But this is what that code review looks like in practice. So it's found a vulnerability, it's assessed the level of it, it gives low, medium, and high, and it's suggested a fix, and then it has fixed it for you. So it's not just fixing it for you, but it's explaining why it's fixing it, which if you're a manager, this is something that even if you don't get it to do the fix for you, being able to explain, this is the error with this element of the code, and this is how specifically you can fix it, that's incredible language to give to a junior engineer. And this is something I keep coming back to. Like, even if you're not using these products to actually generate the code for you, going through the motions of how it generates a plan, how it shows you all of the steps that it needs to do to fix that, how it communicates those, how it shows you the learning outcomes of all of this, even if it's not generating the code, these are incredibly important elements that are going to help to upskill your team and also make sure that everyone has the vocabulary in the team to be able to talk about issues that they're seeing. Because if you never explain the name of an issue, how will they then come back to refer to it? And the final part of this is agentic AI. My other hot take in AI is that agentic still feels like a medical symptom name to me. Like, I am an AI person, I studied mathematics, but I can't come to the event, my heart feels a bit agentic, still feels right to me, and I don't know if I'll ever get past that, but agentic AI. So this is where we just moved from working in coding to working across the entire software development lifecycle. So here's how you can resolve networking issues with QDeveloper CLI. Will this play? I have to play this one. So the other examples you saw were QDeveloper in the IDE, usually VS Code if it's me recording the demos. And this one is in your CLI or your terminal. And so here it's saying I have an EC2 instance with a public IP, and it's blocked by some cloud configuration. Can you help me fix it? So now it's going through and it's using an MCP to do this. It's helping you fix it. It's then going through and looking at the security group configuration. Now it's keeping thinking. It's trying to find a different option because it's got an error. It doesn't give up. I would have already given up and probably cried by this point, but it's very tenacious. And now it's finding a different approach. It's thinking about what it's doing, and you can really see it stepping you through the process, which, like I said, make sure you're always paying attention to these thinking processes, showing you the overall process, because this is going to help you not only know how to solve the problem, but also communicate about the problem that you're solving. These parts are really overlooked, in my opinion. So now it's running the AWS CLI command. So for all of this, we're saying there's like yes, no, or T. Yes is yes, no is no, T is trust. And now if you trust it, it'll just keep running all of this for you. So now it's fixed the cloud configuration, it's identified the EC2 instance, it started checking the security group rules, it added a new rule, and now the change has been applied. And if you're still experiencing issues, it's got a plan of attack to show you. So it's showing you how the problem came about, showing you all the things it did to fix it, showing you how to fix it, and then even saying what might go wrong in future. Can I click the next one? I need an agent to click the slide. So there's also a lot of things that aren't changing. So in this demo, something that happened to me a lot, do we have any consultants here? Yes, I did a tour of duty as a consultant. And one of the things that happened to me all the time is they would just drop you in a code base and you would have to figure out how to fix it for them. And the big part of all of this is if the code base worked really well and was really documented with no issues, they would not be spending the money on a consultant. And this became very clear to me through the job. So being able to panic prep and really get a feel for a code base is incredibly valuable to me. So I am going to play this. So now starting out with Q, that's how you can launch it within Q CLI. So now I know how to navigate to a folder on my desktop, but I still end up doing this all the time where I just ask it to navigate because it's faster and I'm thinking, this is how I'm thinking in my brain. I know how to, can I navigate to this folder? I know the command for this, but I still am thinking in language, so I'm doing that. So great, now it's in the folder and it's asking me, is there anything specific you'd like me to do? So then I'm saying I need to get up to speed with this project before my first daily stand-up. Can you please give me an overview of the project and how it works, but also shed some light on the decisions the developers made when building this so I can understand their point of view. So this is important because there's two parts to this. I want to understand the code, but I also want to understand what the developers were thinking when they made that code. Because in consulting, there's the two parts of this, right? There's maybe decisions that they made. Maybe the people who made those decisions don't even work there anymore, so you can't ask them. But understanding their point of view and their decisions really helps you to understand their engineering culture, so you can help them within that sense. This is where it gets really important. So now it's reading the directory and it's looking through all of the individual components. This is just a sample repo from the AWS samples GitHub. So it's going through, it's actually about a serverless email project that's using lots of lambdas and things like that. And it's thinking some more. It's going through all of the README. So it's going through the README files and the code as part of this. And still thinking. And so it feels like now you're watching this on a screen, it's slow, but in reality, this is so much faster. I was drinking a coffee while recording this in the background, and it was much more relaxed than if I was actually panic prepping for this. So now it's given me an overview. So there's a project report. It's a collection of sample solutions for building serverless mail services and managing servers. It goes through the email security records as the components. It then goes through the Lambda email parser. Then it's giving you nice docs for all of this. There's a serverless attachment processing functionality, and it's showing the AWS services it's using as part of this. Now it's also showing you the signature validator, showing you the use cases. It's showing you all of the credential rotations. Now it's showing you them to RDS, as well as Okta workmail integration. There's so many parts of this. Then it wraps it up with an overall view of the decisions. So it's showing serverless first. They constantly chose that. Modular design, a security focus, configuration flexibility, and all of the AWS services listed. Then it's going through the deployment approach, and it's giving me key takeaways for the stand-up. This, I can then go into the stand-up and look like I have used a computer before. It's not that I couldn't do this, it's just in reality, you don't get the luxury a lot of the time for a few days to really look around and sniff around and see what's happening where. And even if you had a lot of that time, being able to cross-reference between all of these decisions and find some common themes in how things are being decided super useful. This is not, like in the other demos I make about Q Developer, I'm showing how to actually generate code. This isn't generating code at all. It's generating questions. And when we think about things that aren't changing, understanding the right questions to ask is so important. I used to run these like art of the possible workshops for AI for C-suites, advisory boards, executives, because a lot of executives had pretended to understand AI for about 10 to 15 years. And then it became very clear that they did not, in fact, understand it, but they couldn't ask anyone for help because it was their job to know. So I ran these workshops with them, teaching them in a way that they didn't feel like they were being taught. But the biggest outcome of this was making sure they could ask the right questions of their technical team, because they didn't need to understand the technology. They needed to understand the implications of that technology, but they had no shared vocabulary to ask anyone the right questions to really get to the bottom of it. So even if you're not using this to generate code and you're using it to generate that shared vocabulary that you can use, incredibly valid and incredibly useful. And this is just a way of using it that's never on the brochures. So then for this one, will it play? It will not. So then I ask it a follow-up. Can you give me some examples of questions I should be asking the rest of the team during the stand-up so I can get really good context for this project? Once again, this is not generating me any code. I am asking for questions because the questions are pointed and they're going to help me get to the answer that I needed, and they can help me understand the implications of this project. Because if you're being dropped in, it feels like being like airlifted into the rainforest somewhere and you're trying to figure out how to survive. This is what it feels like. So now it's asking about technical understandings, like what are things actively using, the project status of different points, the integration points between the different components and the existing systems, security considerations, user impact, roadmap questions, and also team knowledge. So I love this one of who has the deepest knowledge of each component, and is there documentation beyond this? And what were key lessons you learned during this? If you ask people these questions, you will have such a clear overview of the chaos you're walking into in a way that you would not have the ability to even get to these questions for a few weeks if you were just digging through code and trying to figure out who did what where. This will really help you to get to the core of what you're doing. I have lost my mouse, I found it. So the next demo. I recorded this for a YouTube video on, what day is it today? Thursday, on Tuesday. So this next demo I haven't fully edited down for time, but the whole idea is how can I go from this napkin sketch, this is the real napkin, I saved it and packed it in my bag, to a deployed app. You can't quite see, I should have put this as a picture on the slide, but it's got a box for the user, then it says number 1, upload image to an S3 bucket, number 2, trigger, which triggers a Lambda function, which then saves the results to DynamoDB later. But it actually, number 3, analyzes, sends it to Amazon Rekognition, then it returns the results, and then it saves those to DynamoDB. This is an actual back of napkin sketch, and this is where it's really interesting, because this is how I think, right? Like I am thinking in sketches, in whiteboarding. I love drawing pictures. When I was talking about like not fighting my brain with neurodiversity, this is where it really comes into it. Because if I'm going to think in a picture, I would like to be able to talk to the computer with this as well, instead of having to do the extra translations in my brain. This is how I can really make sense of things. So now it's found my directory. Then it's asking me, it's like asking if it wants to see the components of the folder. Instead, I'm going to paste my prompt in. There we go. It says an image filed in the folder. I want you to look at the architecture I drew and help me to build and deploy it on AWS. So this real picture of this napkin. Great. So now it's found the image and it's going through. So now it's creating an S3 bucket. It got an error, doesn't matter, tenacious. Now it's running CLI commands. I said trust at the start of this, so it's just running all these commands. I used to have to press yes every time. I felt like that bird in The Simpsons that just presses Y. Now you can press trust and it will do this. You should use that when it's sensible to do so. So now it's created the Lambda, it's created my IAM policies, it's created a README, it's written a lot of Python code, it's showing me how to deploy it. And then now I said that I made some test images and I wanted to test it with that. Now it's going through and actually looking at these and seeing what's in them. I made all these test images with Amazon Nova Canvas, which is an image generation model. The first one is of a dog on a surfboard. just to pre-warn you of that. So now it's running to deploy this as well, because I tried to get it to test, but it hadn't even deployed it yet because I didn't read the instructions. It's so polite when telling me this. It's like, do you actually want to deploy it first? Yes, I do. So now it's going through and it's showing me what it expects Rekognition to identify the labels as, because it can also understand images now as well. So then now it's uploading the image that I put into S3, just like I asked, and it's working with all of the other DynamoDB things as well to make this. It's going to come back with the Rekognition piece of all of this. I sped this up because otherwise we would have been here forever, but you can try it. Now it's going through. We will get some errors soon. They're actually kind of interesting. One of the ones with decimal values in DynamoDB, but it's creating all of my resources, and it's fixing the decimal type issue that I mentioned, and it increased the Lambda timeout to make sure all of this could actually happen in time, and it's showing me that it's generating, so it got the dog on a surfboard, perfectly correct. The next one was cats playing poker, also got that one correct. Now I asked it, hey, can you actually make me a front-end interface for this, because I think it would be nice. It thought it was a great idea too. So now it's making me a front-end interface to be able to upload things with this. And this is really interesting because by trade, I'm a data scientist. So I am really good at doing data back-end things. And I would always think, oh, it would be so nice to have an actually nice interface for this. And then I just never bothered spending time on that because I would rather do more data things instead. So even if I do the data part manually, being able to have a nice front end is a blessing. So now it's doing this. We get an error in this. It keeps putting like a loading spinny wheel screen in front of what I wanted, but I just told it, see, look at this. It's still stuck on analyzing the image, which was the spinny wheel, and now it's fixing this for me again. So it's going through in the back end, finding its own mistakes in its code, fixing them, and making sure that it's working across this. At one point, it tried to make it without AWS just as a demo, and I was very specific that I wanted it. The overlay is still there. So now fixing it again, tenacity. And now it's going through to restart the server, apply the changes. I do just have this set as like localhost, but it does give you full instructions to make a custom domain for this if you are less lazy than I am. Now it was going through and it was not giving me the actual labels from Rekognition because it thought it was a demo, and I was like, no, this needs to be real code. So that's what it's doing here. And it's thinking, and sooner or later, we will have a working app. Great. So now it's fixed the AWS integration that I had. It's going through and looking all of the overlay issues that we were getting. It's got all of the AWS integrations working, and it's put the polling mechanism in as well. Now it's showing me how to test the application, and I'm going to test it. The image will totally pop up on the screen. Did I remember to do this? Great. There we go. Okay. So now this is what the little front end it made looks like. This is a wallaby on Cape Hillsborough Beach, which is from where I'm from in Australia. And it's analyzing the image. It's thinking about it. It's a wallaby, not a kangaroo, but I will allow it because that's a very nuanced difference. Now I'm dropping in a picture of the Empire State Building that I also made with Amazon Nova Canvas, and it's analyzing that as well. And it's detected with 96.6% confidence that it's the Empire State Building as well. So this is how you can go from a drawing. Like, I didn't write any of the code as part of this. I told you there were cats playing poker. I tried to go for a casino vibe. It even got that they were wearing formal wear, which I just think is incredible. But this is connecting with AWS Rekognition, which is a service that detects all of these things. This is how you can actually work. Like, I always, before I worked at AWS, I would see these really cool demos of people using different services and I would never actually bother to build a lot of them. Some of them I would, but I just didn't have time to do all of it. And this is I find it really interesting as a way to go through and actually build the things that I saw in keynotes, the things that I saw in sessions like this one, so I could really get my hands dirty and understand how these people were working. And yes, this is a squirrel in Central Park. And as part of this as well, later in the demo, which I cut out for time, I got it to write me a README. And as well as part of this, I got it to make me commands to be able to spin off the product at the end. Because I am notorious for forgetting to turn things off in AWS. Show of hands who's left an instance running that they didn't mean to? Yes. It's a rite of passage. But I know myself enough now to put this in. And so I say, can you please make sure I have instructions to close this off when I'm finished? And it will add instructions. And then I'm just saying, great, let's shut it down. And it will go through methodically and get rid of everything because it is much more tenacious and patient than I am. Because I would always just think, oh, I'll turn this off tomorrow. Narrator. Brooke did not turn this off tomorrow. And it was just this overall thing of just like creating this vortex for myself. So when I'm talking about like not fighting myself, this is what I mean. So before we get, oh, it's gonna just do that again, perfect. So before we get too excited about AI solving everything, some things never change. Does anyone have an example of something in their workplace that AI has not solved for them yet? Yes, call it out. Printers, yes. Before I left Australia, so I moved from Australia to New York City for this job. Before I left Australia, I gave my parents a new laptop because I was not there to fix their computer for them anymore. And as the computer person, it is my job to fix the printer. And I connected the printer to this laptop. Like that was my gift to them when I left Australia. That was a laptop that they could print from. And I was genuinely worried that if it broke, I don't know what I was going to do. Touch wood, it has not broken yet. Integration is running great, but yes, printers is a concept. One of these things is people trying to gatekeep in tech. That's not new. So I learned to code on MySpace, once again dating myself. So on MySpace, so many people my age learned to code here because you could do a little bit of HTML, a little bit of CSS, you would have a crazy cursor on there. I didn't think it worked for me that people thought I was cool. That's not what I was going for, which is lucky because that's not what happened. But I learned a lot about code. And even at the time, everyone was like, oh, HTML is not real coding. MySpace is not real coding. It's never going to be enough for some people. Also, then later, I learned SQL. And people were like, oh, that's not a real programming language. Who cares? Instead, I just focused on what I was doing and what I really wanted to get there. No matter what, people will find a way to change the criteria of what they think is technical enough, or they'll find a way to say that someone is not a developer. What I will say is people in this room are not like that. Like that's why you're an AWS community event. It's my favorite thing about the AWS community because people are welcome and like don't let people tell you that you're not a developer. For the longest time, I felt weird about calling myself a developer because I still feel like a maths person. However, then I'm building stuff all the time. So instead, think about how you can make it an easy path for someone to come into becoming a developer and to get confident. So even if you're a senior person managing teams, this is a really good way of using AI to show them the types of questions they should be asking. When you get a new intern and they don't know what to be asking when they have these one-on-ones, show them how to generate questions so that they can get the answers that they need. Because they're trying to learn how to have a job and how to build code at the same time, which is really tough for a lot of people. So show them different ways they can use this to feel included and feel like they have the confidence to ask questions, because that's going to pay off so much in the long run, and that will make them a better developer as they go through. And communication is still really hard, but it's still really important. Another intern I had, so I worked at a startup, and we were working in Crystal when Crystal was still version 1. So Crystal is sort of like Ruby, but different and very confusing in different ways. And the interns had to learn Crystal as part of the internship, which is a lot if you've just come out of a boot camp. Like that's a big lift. And he kept telling me that learning to deal with people was so much harder than learning Crystal the whole time. And this still rings true for a lot of people. And I think there's so many of the demos that I make, I said they're all about generating code. But the ones that I actually use in my life the most are all about communication. So I have another demo for this one. This is about a demo that finds the optimal hat for a cat. But the prompt I'm using is, I'm a data scientist and I made this project, but I need to hand it over to my front-end developers. What should I tell them about my work to make sure they understand everything and that they have the information they need to ask me good questions in future? So like I said, it's a data set with different characteristics of a cat and then their most preferred hat, so you can predict in future what a cat's favorite hat will be. Very serious business happening here. But these sorts of handoffs happen all the time in engineering teams. And a lot of the time, especially if it's between data and front end or maybe network engineers and different people, they don't have a lot of shared vocabulary to be able to really communicate what they want. But now it's going through with a project overview. It's showing the key components. It's showing like what's in the different Python scripts so that if they don't understand Python, they'll still understand what the pieces are coming from. Now it's showing the model output format and the API usage, which is going to be really important for someone building a front end. And it's showing the integration considerations as well as different questions to anticipate. So like, how should I handle invalid inputs? What's the expected response time for these predictions? Can we add new cat features in the future? How often will the model be retrained? Are there any edge cases where the model performs poorly? All of these are great questions to ask, and I'm not sure they would have come up in the first meeting in all cases. Like, this is stuff that could have taken 2 weeks. So we talk a lot about like how fast it can make you as a developer, but it's things like this that actually really save you time working in a company, being able to get to those high-value conversations earlier instead of having 3 meetings before you get to the meeting with the actually good information. Learning can still be hard too. I had a really good time looking at stock photos of people crying in front of computers because they all felt like me. I mostly learned to code on my own. So I studied mathematics, I then did MATLAB, I did a little bit of R, which I love, you get to make a lot of pirate jokes. And then when I learned Python, it was like all on my own, and I had no one to talk to. This before I went to user group meetups. It was just me and Google searching and a dream. And I was so frustrated a lot of the time because I didn't even know how to look through docs when I first started because I didn't know what I was trying to ask for, and it was so difficult to be able to find out what I needed to learn. Also, as part of this, it was really overwhelming learning Python because there's like, you need to find something that teaches you what you need, but you need to find something that communicates in the way that you're going to remember. And there's some tutorials that do both of those great, wonderful, but there's a lot that only have one of the two. So I find using AI is something that really helps me to get shortcuts along the way here. So this is another AWS sample repo. It's about Java on AWS. So now I'm saying that I'm using this to learn about Java. Can you please put together a README that's actually a workbook with study notes, something that I can track my progress and my learning and my knowledge. So now instead of it creating a README for the code, it's making me an interactive workbook that's going to go through, and I can check off what I've learned. I can make sure I've learned everything, because this is also something when I was learning on my own, I didn't know how to get a full picture because I didn't know what I was missing. So I couldn't find the knowledge gaps that I was carrying through in my learning because there was no one there to check that for me. So this isn't teaching you this stuff, it's showing you how to go through with the actual workbook. And it's including module tracking, areas to document code snippets, best practices. It's then explaining different AWS services, and it's giving you a project summary and resources for future learning, all in this one extra README. Then I'm telling it, I really respond to positive encouragement. Can you go back over the workbook and make sure it really cheers me on? So now it's just adding fanfare and pizzazz, which is what I think is missing from a lot of code tutorials. I am a very excited person, and I wanted them to be as excited as I felt. And now it's going through and reading the file that it already made and just making it really exciting. You don't have to do this. You could ask it to just add sports metaphors in here. If it's something that's going to help you get there, I love a sticker chart. You know, if you like this and this is what's going to help you learn, you now can make these own custom learning resources as well. If you find a GitHub repo that's something open source and you're just really having trouble stepping yourself through it, use this to make a guidebook for yourself. So many of these things are learning resources that are not generating the code for you. They're just making sure you're understanding everything. And when we talk about it being an assistant, I think people get so caught up in the idea that it's going to generate code for me, they forget all of these other learning and communication things that can happen. So now it's even given me uplifting section titles, encouraging phrases, a personal reflection section, which I think is the most important, because then when you go to teach someone else this information, you can say, this was a really good resource because these are the things that I learned that I wasn't confident with before. Because one of the things I know about learning AWS, especially in the community, is everyone wants to learn something. And if you get a reputation as someone that learns a lot, people will keep asking you, hey, what's the best way to learn Java? And being able to remember what you thought about different resources makes it really easy to then give them to someone else later. And good judgment is something else that's still super crucial. So AI can show you what you can do, but you still need to decide on what you should do based on your content, your constraints, and your goals. And this can versus should situation is something that is so core to every tech job I have ever had. There's so many things you can do, but understanding what you should do is the difference between a junior and a senior engineer. To me, that's the difference between a staff engineer and a team lead. There's so many things you can do, but understanding what you should do is really crucial. And it's really hard because AI amplifies the can side a lot. Like I asked it, like, hey, can you make this napkin drawing? And it's like, hell yeah, let's go. That's incredible. But possible doesn't always mean good for your specific situation. And this is why this can versus should question matters more now than ever before. And AI might not know about your should for the same reason. Remember earlier I said people are bad at prompting for the same reason they're bad at managing? Because they didn't tell the AI any of this stuff either. So things about your domain constraints, your architecture decisions, your team culture, your business requirements, your talent market. Like if you can't hire someone with the skills to maintain that system, you don't want to start using that. So you need to be able to even work with your learning and development teams to make sure that you can hire or train people to be able to maintain what you're building. AI doesn't know that for your area. It's really hard. So this is why this can versus should piece is really important, but also making sure that you're then using AI as your sounding board. So I want to do X. What are my options here? So instead of getting it to specifically just do it for you, show you those options and see the types of decisions that you're making. What would be the second order effects if I changed Z? Super important. Sorry, I said Z, not Z. I will try. And then if we made this decision, what would I need to upskill my team in? Great question to ask, because then you can also get it to figure out how you can plan this learning journey and see the different milestones, like those learning milestones from earlier. If you need to upskill 10 people in a skill, you sort of need to break it down so they don't have to do it all in one day. They can pace it through in a sensible way. So using AI as your sounding board is when you're really going to get those productivity gains that are not in the brochure. I also want to talk about vibe coding. Once again, terrible name, but I think vibe coding, when I was talking about gatekeeping earlier, people saying like vibe coding is not real, blah, blah, blah. Do you remember the first app you built that just worked? Like, it was a validation, that's magic of creation, and this is where I fell in love with coding. Like this validation when something finally actually worked from, this is what got me in, and it's what kept me hooked the whole time. Vibe coding can bring back that joy. And this is what I think most people are missing. Like if you write bad code, it's bad. Regardless of how you write it, that's bad. Thinking instead about the burnout side of this. Almost every developer I know is experiencing burnout to some degree. It's really hard. And I keep thinking about whenever I see people break out of this, vibe coding is what's really doing it for people lately. And my favorite AI experiences over the last year have been, they're my favorite because they brought that magic back for me. And you're allowed to have fun. You know, you're allowed to do a silly little napkin drawing, or I have another whole blog post where I was prompting with emojis and getting it to write whole Python apps just from a string of emojis because I wanted to see if it worked, even though you're not supposed to, and it did, and it was so exciting. I felt so excited when that code finally ran from my little string of emojis. I was exhilarated, and I hadn't felt like that for a really long time. So AI is really impressive. It can do all of the official things on the website for you, but think about how it can bring the magic back for you, because that's what it felt like for me when I felt like a developer in the first place, and it's how I can keep going with that. So as part of that, think about what's actually in your toolbox now and how you can put a little bit of magic in there as well, because there's no point having great tools if you don't know how and when to use them or you can't get them. And this is where that problem-solving mindset still is really core to what it means to be a developer. So the skill remains the same, knowing which tool is right for the job, understanding when to use what, and making good decisions with the tools that you have available. So the future developer, this is where it gets weird as well, right? And this is why I made that big pyramid before, because it's so hard to even imagine what tech will look like. There's so many things changing, but I know what excites me about being a developer. I know how I make decisions as a developer, and none of that stuff really changed before. So I don't think those elements will change, but I know everything else will. So I need to be able to understand both fundamentals and new capabilities. And then also being able to use AI to work with me, not against me or replacing. So I want to be able to say, here's the best way I learn, how can I get there? Or I need to ask these questions in meetings. These are things I use all the time just to help me do what I do best, which is really getting to understand big problems and break them down. And all of this is understanding the difference between can and should. That's why I ask so many questions, because I'm trying to figure out those nuances in that decision. So your assignment is to go and explore these tools and do something wacky, like try and find something that's not in the brochure, try and find something different, experience some magic, because the magic isn't in the tools, it's in how you choose to use them. So on the top link of this, there's information about Q Developer. On the bottom, there's my information. And then if we have time, we have some trivia.